Hello, and welcome to a revamping of a previous project I've done before, because I'm the comic archivist, and I'm a tad bored writing fluff for What Culture today. So I'm going to be sort of bringing back my blank a day line of videos, while also merging it with my binging on comics. Basically, it'll be a smaller version of my reader's history, where it's more about a specific arc or issues of any given comic suggested. As always, patron suggestions get top priority. I know no one cares about the light housekeeping, so let's just cue the X theme and get this train wreck rolling. The Chuck Austen run of the X-Men comics was not very well received by readers, or critics, or literally anyone who read it basically, which means that it'd probably be a 9.5 from CBR today. Yes, I went there, and yes, I know you can throw my current gig back in my face, since I do hand out a lot of 5 stars when What Culture tried that month of attempting for legit reviews that no one actually read. Either way, while people did dislike it, his run was certainly not dull. That's gotta be points in someone's book. This is his last full storyline on the Uncanny X-Men, but he's best known for his stories that happened before this, such as introducing the school nurse who was in love with the catatonic Havoc, Nightcrawler's paternity being revealed to be a demon, and of course the plot to try and make Nightcrawler the Pope. It even added a whole new aspect to the mutant mythos, with angelic and demonic-looking mutants actually being spawn of angels and demons who have been locked in war for eternities, or something like that. With all that backstory out of the way, let's finally get into Uncanny X-Men number 437 through 441, She Lies with Angels, written by Chuck Austen, pencils by Salvador LaRocca, inks by Danny Miki, and colors by Udon. Starting off obviously with Uncanny X-Men number 437, first thing you might notice is that is kind of a weird roster on that cover. Considering how small the pool was for popular X people at the time that weren't handled by other writing staff, it could be worse. We open up in Cumberland, Kentucky, the hometown of the Guthrie clan, as Jeb Guthrie and his friend Ray Jr. talk about their new trading cards, and of course bad-mouthing the Cabot family, because of course they're Southern, so naturally that means that their family's a feudin' with another. Unfortunately though, some of them Cabot boys here, and as you know, they're clearly an evil clan because they're also a bit racist. That kind of actually loses its punch because Jeb was actually looking to pick a fight with them. Why? To show off that he, like his brother Cannonball and sister Husk, is a mutant. Yes, this kid provides the pinnacle of mutant-human relations by instigating a fight to show up someone he dislikes. Brilliant. Now I'm just gonna step over the current political puddle there to say that it's no wonder Jeb gets a crowbar to the back of the head before the sheriff comes over. However, the sheriff being there only escalates things, with cars and a house exploding, and I think by the end Jeb may be a supervillain. But enough of that opener, time to head over to Westchester and deal with Paige Guthrie talking about her relationship with the original X-Man, Angel. To catch y'all up, Paige Guthrie can shed her skin to have any alloy underneath, so she kinda gets naked a surprising amount of time for someone who's only 19. Yes, legal for porn, not so legal for the relationship she wants. Warren Worthington III, or Angel, is still one of the original X-Men, except now that Chuck Austen added the Angel-Demon War element, he has holy blood that can heal anyone, except for Nightcrawler cause he's a demon. He's also no longer blue because of that whole ordeal, I believe. Okay. So, as I mentioned, Angel and Husk are talking about whether they should have a relationship, because Paige knows that he was showing interest in her, and he's also hot, so why not just come out and say it? And she's also crying to bait this guy into bed. Okay, I'm not outwardly opposed to two characters on a team growing close, even if one is technically underage by consent laws. That's actually an interesting story, and could have been handled very well. This is not that. And I think Austen's inexperience in the mainstream is what really hurt him on it. Either way, Angel says yes to her leaving him alone, and they're both pretty broken up about it. It'd be a shame if someone's family member was just shot. So Jubilee comes in and hands the phone to Paige, telling her that her brother Jedediah had been shot. Yes, Jubilee is on this team, and yes, she is still just there for firecrackers and 90s animated show fans. We then hop back over to Kentucky, complete with cows this time, as Jeb and Ray are both in trouble for causing the commotion in town. Both Ray and Jeb are talking about how they were just joshing them, and words don't hurt. What really works here, at least in this issue, is that Ray's father, Ray Sr., brings up that his black son should know damn well that words can hurt. The boys do try to play this off, that it's the Cabot's fault really, but they aren't getting out of that easy. And that's when Ray Jr. let it slip Jeb did in fact instigate the whole thing. The parents are now furious, but that leaves the sheriff with only one option: taking Jeb in once he's healed up from his gunshot wound and banning the Guthries from town. That's when Angel and Husk enter from out of the blue, just asking where the older brother Joshua, since he's the man of the house, is. He's in town performing, and of course that means that when Jeb brings up that Joshua just likes the perks that go along with being a singer, Paige gets to make a petty jab at the fact that Angel just won't poke her jailbait booty. Since we talked about him, it's time to hop over to Josh Guthrie performing at The View. Joshua has some nifty red chicken wings, but his main power is that he can be his own choir. No, seriously, his powers are his wings, the special blood that comes with that, and special vocal cords that allow him to basically make any sound he has heard or can imagine, including other voices and being able to make multiple sounds at once. This whole scene is narrated by a waitress named Julia, as her heart melts listening to his song. Even while Jay's actual girlfriend is standing there, Julia knows that he's totally singing to her, ending the issue. Now, for a first issue, this isn't bad. The opener with Jeb could work well to set things up, and despite the fact that the Cabots are really painted to be scum, with their variety of bigotry being the highlight, it doesn't hide the fact that Joshua and Ray were in the wrong for goading them into confrontation to show off that Jeb's a mutant. Similarly, if there's been more of an urgency put into Angel and Husk's relationship, while it was built up over the last few issues, there needed to be something like them screwing after missions. It could have led to a much better foundation for the "are we gonna do this or what" kind of attitude that Paige has. But hey, Austin's not gone off the deep end yet, so we still have plenty of time to be let down. Onward to the next issue. This is Uncanny X-Men number 438. The previously's page really gives us the what's going to happen rather than what has happened, as it talks about Josh and Julia's secret romantic desire, even though she literally just heard him sing. This whole love story is a poor man's Romeo and Juliet, complete with quotes, but I'll save the bigger comparisons towards the end, or when I get really annoyed at the angsty teen melodrama and I need to rant. So the issue starts right off with Elizabeth, who I think is another Guthrie, but I don't know anymore. They're like rabbits, looking out the window and seeing Pa Cabot and his boys pull up outside in their pickup truck, and they have a shotgun. Lucinda, that's Mama Guthrie, tells Lizzie to go get her gun, all the while Sheriff Pete is trying to ease the situation from becoming an actual shootout. So Pa Cabot and Mama Guthrie have their confrontation on the front porch, with Paige shedding off into what can only be described as Satan rock. I'm honestly not sure what element she's actually supposed to be right now, but look at her. But who needs mutants when you have a shotgun and you're in a stand your ground state? Granted, aiming it point blank at the sheriff who's standing in between you and your target may be harder to defend in court. Okay, so that scene was so boring that Chuck decided right then and there we needed to see how Josh's set went, and Julia is now crushing on him, while Rosalinda tells her to go over to Josh and say that she can't make their date tonight. See, Rosalinda is doing that thing that a lot of people think is a good idea, but most people don't actually do because they're not idiots, or used to be. See, Rosalinda is going to be doing that whole ignoring or playing it loosey-goosey so that Josh will want her even more. Julia, being full of class, decides that the best time to tell him all this is immediately and just casually goes into the band's dressing room. Meanwhile, back at Hillbilly Ranch, the standoff is still going strong until Mama Guthrie inevitably asks the sheriff if he wants to go to dinner with her. So Cabot, thinking the sheriff is clearly on her side, decides to attack, which naturally goes well for him and his kids. The sheriff draws his gun on Cabot, leading to a stalemate, just so we can get back to Julia standing awkwardly in the band's changing room gawking at the shirtless guys. Joshua tells Manuel, another member of his band, that she's cool and won't tell anyone that his wings are real, because apparently everyone thought they were fake. Why? In a world where there's famous mutants with wings, famous musicians that are mutants, and this kid's a Guthrie, who in this small town thought the guy who was singing 7 notes at once was a normie. Sorry, none of that matters. Point is, it's a stupid line. So yeah, he remembers her name from way back when, and they have a moment where they're about to kiss before Manuelo interrupts. Then we get the big exposition dump about their meet cute, which is actually about how they would hang out for like a couple months when they were 10 at a secret pond in the mountains, where she would also go skinny dipping sometimes, so Josh accidentally saw her. I will give Austin another point for this. This version of Romeo and Juliet at least had the two leads knowing each other even for a small amount of time beforehand, so that way you can say their torrid romance is based on unrequited and a longing for what they consider to be their happiest days, or something along those lines. That leads to them about to kiss again. But then, like so many teenage boys' wet dreams, her grandmother bursts in to grab her and reveal that he's a Guthrie and she's a Cabot, and they leave. At the ranch, the sheriff finally has the Cabots arrested, where then the sheriff basically tries to say, hey, I'm not sending your boy to jail, so why don't you give me at least an old-fashioned? But Mama Guthrie refuses a date from the guy who still did shoot her son. Meanwhile, Joshua and Manuela are driving home, but Joshua doesn't care, he's blinded by love and must see his Juliet. Meanwhile, we cut over to Cabot Mansion, which doesn't exactly look like a mansion, where Paul Cabot punches Sheriff Pete because he was supposed to let them burn them freaks out of town. And in the Guthrie's barn, the rest of the X-Men have arrived to end the issue. I think I may be broken. Outside of some cheesy, sappy, angsty melodrama that actually comes off as sarcastic 90s cynicism for just how truly silly the Romeo and Juliet play is, and the fact that it literally now became the altruistic Guthries and all of the uncanny roster of the X-Men, except Juggernaut, but we might get to that story eventually, versus like 4 rednecks with shotguns. How can there even be 3 more issues of this? Outside of all that, it's not bad so far. It's very mid-2000s. Yes, that was the best segue I had into Uncanny X-Men number 439. And just because I feel like I have nowhere else to say this, I really do like the costuming on Angel and Husk here. I just hate it as an X-Men. Angel has this LARPer feel, and Husk, well, she looks like one of those pretentious teens that really thinks that vinyls need to come back from the mid-2000s before vinyls actually came back. It's nowhere being close to functional for a heavy hitter like Husk. But she's a teen girl, so hey, that costume kind of fits the age range, sadly. Oh, and yes, I own all of these single issues, mainly because I really do like these LaRocca covers. This issue begins with Sheriff Pete and Paul Cabot talking on a hill, with Paul Cabot wondering if the sheriff is really on the side of the Cabots like he says he is. While the sheriff is totally saying, oh no dude, I'm totally as evil as you, we enter one of the most famous scenes from Romeo and Juliet. Act 2, Scene 12. Where Paul Capulet shows that he has a robot factory. Shakespeare was ahead of his time. Seriously though, did this really need to be a thing? A good old-fashioned Romeo and Juliet adaptation set in what is a modern Hatfield versus the McCoys doesn't need clearly evil people to also have robots. Congratulations, I think we found where the shark got jumped. But that reveal means very little as we head over to Julia seeing her cousin and realizing that for being attacked by muty scum, he barely even has a sunburn. Upset at the inconvenience to her time with Josh, she goes and angst all over her room. Grandma Cabot comes up, and Julia spills her heart about how she's been in love with Josh since they were 10, and she just can't quit him. Throughout that whole soliloquy, Grandma, like the audience, doesn't actually pay attention to the standard star-crossed lover monologue because Joshua is flying at her window. This may just be me, but I swear I've seen that look on Vulture's face right before he's captured Mary Jane. Meanwhile, at the Guthrie's ranch, on their porch, Mama Guthrie and Paige talk about how Paige seems to be stepping away from being a redneck, and that she is apparently fully in love with Warren. You know, this scene might have worked if Warren didn't look exactly like a recolored Josh. I mean, seriously, outside of outfit choice and wing color, they're the same character model, even down to Udon getting the coloring on Warren's hair wrong throughout the first couple of issues. Plus the fact that Paige is from Hicksville, and they're really playing up the small town rural Green Acres vibe. She wants to tap someone who looks that awkwardly on model to her brother. I'm not sure if it's a subconscious thing or hilarious. Well, to me it's hilarious. Whoa, sorry, that rant's over. Let's hop over to the barn where Warren apologizes to Wolverine. It's actually a touching moment because ultimately it is true. Warren and Wolverine have rarely ever been on the same team, but when they were, we did get friction. And it is truly strange to have this be the comic that goes, I'm sorry for being a dick, Logan. It works really well. I just really wish it was done by someone else and not hindered by the rest of this. Quick cut over to the Cabot robot, where I apologize, this isn't a factory. This is just a random power armor they unburied under a ton of rubble from a previous fight the X-Men had in the area. Given their recent run-in with the Church of Humanity, I think it might be them, but it could have easily been the Reavers, the Purifiers, or even the Right, considering the bobblehead on that reminds me of one of those robo-suits. But who cares about a random page cutaway when we have Josh and Julia finally kissing? True, it's in front of their grandmother, and then the grandmother passes out, but who cares? Mushy puppy love, where Josh wants her to run away with him. But she does the, we can't, but I want to, but we can't, but I want to, and then the whole, tomorrow at sunrise, I'll meet you at our spot. Julia then goes to help her grandmother up, who's done a total 180 because them's was the sweetest words she ever did hear. Which is really sad for that grandmother, but she tells Julia to go to that boy. She does drive up to their special fishing hole, where Josh is there already, and they kiss. I'm not sure if they actually got down to the dirty deeds, but she is in her underwear when the evil Iron Paw Cabot bursts into their love nest. Like I said, I'll get to the Romeo and Juliet bits after the fact, but basically there is a very strange juxtaposition happening between Angel and Paige's relationship and the attempted urgency of the Josh and Julia relationship that could really have made this a great hidden gem of a comic. If this didn't read so much as, Cabots are obviously the worst people ever, oh, and they have a power suit now. Them having the power suit just really breaks what may not be the best thing from the first two issues, but did have enough okayness to at least be writing the line of, wow, maybe Austin's run was just bad because of that one storyline and being the alternative to Grant Morrison's new X-Men. But this video is going on long, so let's try and plow through these last two issues. Uncanny X-Men number 440, and damn, that is one spoilerific cover. We begin with Mama Guthrie having that talk about Paige and Warren's relationship with Warren, which basically boils down to, are you gonna bang her or not? I'm going to save the big bulk of talking about this, but let's be honest here. Currently, Paige and Warren's relationship, which he has rebuked, granted reluctantly, is that Paige thinks he's hot and she wants to bang him. Trying to pass this off as Warren teasing her along is just utterly moronic when you see that, yes, he has said no. Yes, you can insert your own comments about how this is a gender reversal of the you're stringing him along, aren't you argument. It just really is an infuriating plot point. On to more action-oriented bits, as Iron Paw Cabot has walked in on his daughter with that sworn enemy Mute boy from down the street. Okay, never mind, because that was just a quick cutaway. So then it goes back to that damn conversation in the kitchen where Warren, reminder that this is to Husk's mother. He basically goes, yes, I do want to stick and stir your daughter. She's very special to me. But I'm torn because she's really young. And, you know, I've been around since the 60s. And, of course, Paige overhears him spilling his emotions to her mother. Back at the pond, Julia is telling her bigoted dad she totally wanted Josh to nail her. And she's not gonna lie to anyone about it, and she's done hiding it, etc. Her father, in sheerest retort, pimp smacks her, sending her flying. Now remember, being pimp smacked by a dude in power armor may not be the best thing for your health if you're a lowly human. Back in the kitchen of oversharing, Paige bitches out Warren for daring not to bang her and storms off. Warren follows her outside, where Paige proves that she's only thinking about her own desires by throwing the fact that Psylocke and Warren broke up, and Betsy and anyone else could never love Angel. Of course, like any good hack writer writing a couple's fighting, this is what makes him say that he loves Paige more than anything, and they kiss. They then fly up in the air and start doing the nasty, and Mama Guthrie underneath them to catch their clothing, to watch the aerial ballet that is hardcore angry sex in the sky. Now yes, this is the scene that every comic site likes putting on their list because it is a really stupid moment, no matter how you sliced it. But what most of them leave out is that it comes after a series of stupid argument choices where literally Paige emotionally bullies him into jollying her Rogers. Maybe some action at the pond will make me less annoyed. Oh, thank God Cabot is choking out Joshua. And then blast him in the chest. See, sometimes you just need to see someone shot through the heart. And Cabot's to blame. This comic gives love a bad name. Ha! Oh, and Julia is still breathing, so that's at least a plus. In principle, I mean. From the farm, Wolverine hears the weapons fire. He and Polaris go and investigate. Nightcrawler hangs back and we find out that Ray and his dad are still there. Oh, also, apparently Mama Guthrie likes her dark meat as her and Ray senior kiss. Although timeline-wise, when is it like 4 hours that she brought up the dating the sheriff thing on the porch? Anyways, the sheriff shows up because the Cabots air-quote made bail, so he wanted to make sure the Guthries were okay, and then he looks heartbroken seeing Mama Guthrie holding someone else's hand. God, I wish I could care. So Polaris shows up to fight the metal men, but they aren't made of metal, it's carbon composite, so they have the upper hand. Julia wakes up, but instead of taking her to the hospital, Iron Paw Cabot just wants to stomp the muty mud. But back at the homestead, the sheriff has now gone insane because of course he has, and drawn his gun, solely because Mama Guthrie has slighted him. But we can't have feelings being the reason he's acting this way, especially in a book that's made up of 85% love talk. It's because she decided to start banging a black guy to really take out any negative effect of love and emotion. Yes, there may be swearing in my post-issues follow-up to this storyline, because this is annoying. Anyways, Nightcrawler knocks him out, but they've got bigger issues as the Iron Cabot Brigade comes over the hill. Directly diving into Uncanny X-Men number 441 because I've lost the will to care after that last issue. Hey, at least it's a nice cover though. While Husk and Angel are mid-air boning, they hear Julia scream for Josh and leap into action after seeing the Meccano Hicks on the march. Husk rips off her skin because I'm sure that's an image anyone on the bottom of a cowgirl really wants to have seared into their brain. She then casts Meteor by being made of stone and plummeting to the ground, and the fight really begins, with Nightcrawler coming to assist. There's actually a not bad moment where Logan doesn't join the fight so we can make sure that Polaris is okay after having a missile-guided facial. And also to point out that he can see her fun bags, but put at least nice enough to be a costuming joke more than yet another way this comic tries and build everyone wanting to have sex with each other. But then we cut to Julia bringing Josh into the pond, and in what by itself is a very poetic page, they sink beneath the waves as she kisses him. Then we see them actually both sink to the bottom until the bubbles stop. At the farm, Mama Guthrie surrenders to Pa Cabot as long as Cabot agrees to spare the kids. Well, evil redneck gonna be a dick, so nope, he totally blows up the cop car that everyone was trying to escape in. Back at the pond, this wouldn't be a Romeo and Juliet pastiche without one dumb teen dying, so Joshua heals up under the water and pulls Julia out of the pond with him, and not tries CPR or anything to try and revive her. Just a good hearty, why? Surprisingly, she's still dead after that. Things really are looking bleak as Iron Paw Cabot has Mama Guthrie at blaster point, but surprise, Sheriff Pete has a sorta change of heart, if he was written consistently on any level that would be anyways, and protects the innocent. Bit late, but okay. He undoes Pa Cabot's helmet and then shoots him in the head, but the power suit, now no longer having an operator, falls dead on him. That doesn't mean he can't still be after Mama Guthrie's wizard sleeve though, as a last act. We then learn that Kurt bamfed the kids out of the car, but sadly he couldn't save Ray Sr. If only he had more impact on the story, this might actually mean something. Now that the main action is over though, let's wrap things up quickly. Josh is trying to kill himself over Julia's body by stabbing himself. In the real world, Joshua would have coated Julia with his blood, and since he's an angelic mutant, he's got that holy blood which would assumably heal Julia by sheer osmosis. But really, the code is just everyone seeing where they are now in a quick bit with Julia air quote narrating. We end the storyline and the issue with Josh on stage singing about Julia, singing just for her. After this story, Joshua would join the X-Men, but since they had someone named Joshua on the X-Men already, he'd start being called Jay rather than Joshua, and his codename would be Icarus. Honestly, I never liked the character enough because he really did get the short end of the Guthrie family powers. As a whole, this storyline was surprisingly not the worst X-Men story I've ever read. When the suggestions came in for this, I assumed it would be because it was on the same tier as the previous stories from Austin under the X titles, and hilariously bad. But no. I think overall this story definitely shows that while Chuck Austin was extremely inexperienced, some of the ideas he utilizes could have been made for a fantastic storyline, and with minor tweaks, it could have really been a hidden gem. On a more analytical side, the relationship between Husk and Angel hurts because there's too much talking about a relationship before anything truly happened between the characters. Angel has officially said no, denying his desire for Paige, but Paige literally continues to guilt Angel because of air quote love she feels for him. She totally gave him her heart according to her, but as the climax of a piss poor will they won't they never had a moment where Paige did give her heart to him. There's flirting with the idea, and Angel does pull the "no one means more to me than you" in issue 422, I want to say, but frankly, it falls flat because it needed a heated moment of passion to really work, rather than literally her screaming at him about how no one will ever love him, for him to decide to kiss her and screw her. Similarly, I really wanted to like how Austen played that angle, the one with Husk and Angel, against the Cliff Notes version of Romeo and Juliet with Julia and Josh, since in theory a relationship with a deep bond can grow into love far more than the expediency of love at first sight. Of course, that is kinda hurt by the fact that Julia and Josh did spend a few weeks together when they were 12 being in puppy love, so it's a reignition rather than straight up first sight. The ultimate problem when it came down to that story isn't Josh or Julia at all. I mean, because they're teenagers, so the frilly, angsty dialogue does work. No, the problem with that story is, frankly, the Cabots and Guthrie's family feud. The thing about the Montagues and the Capulets were that there really wasn't a social gap in who they were as families. Both families were trash when it came to their rivalry, so much so that the sheriff was neutral. And regardless of the inciting incident, it was the kids being trapped in a similar standing in life that made the feud between families seem even stupider. The fact that in this, the Cabots as a family are racist, bigoted douchebags, while Mama Guthrie is shown to be kind and caring towards everyone, makes it less Romeo and Juliet, because you can see that if Juliet showed up with Joshua, she'd have been alright with it. Mama Guthrie would have been like, "It's okay, sugar." It's a one-sided feud in how we're shown. Yes, Jeb and Ray goaded the Cabots in the very beginning with their own "do you bite your thumb at me, sir" scene. But honestly, with how dickish the Cabots are, it almost feels justified. Yes, I'm in the political camp that you should always be better than who you deem as your enemy. But it is understandable why someone would be an ass back to someone who's an ass. Say that was fixed, and the Cabots disliked the Guthries because they were deemed icky for the sheer volume of mutants that have come out of Mama Guthrie's magic bus. Then you can make the Guthries issue with the Cabots that they're so rich, while the rest of the town is barely making ends meet. Boom, you still make the feud a thing, while the Guthries are seen as being morally right, while the Cabots still come off as bigoted without needing to hammer in these points. Mutants are an allegory for discriminated minorities. You don't need to actively have a "but the blacks, oh, we hate them too" mentality for your villains, particularly in a small town environment where community matters more than race most of the time, especially in the modern South. Not saying it's bad or that it doesn't happen, but it makes the baddies cartoonishly bad, hurting the piece, especially if you want to go for discrimination overtones. It just hurts it overall. That then brings me to probably the most irksome point. While the romance between the teens and teammates can be considered you can't blame Austen for that. He wrote them for 15-year-old boys, and that's not wrong at all. That style is sadly on point. Especially in the mid-2000s, these angsty, frilly dialogues, it was very much the norm for teen writers. We don't like talking about it now, but yeah, if you know anyone, late 20s, early 30s, and they're a writer, they have one of these sorts of stories. Usually it's reserved for fanfic sites, or back when fiction press was a thing, you could really see it then, or LiveJournal. That is why this can seem totally terrible for older readers, or in hindsight as someone who was part of that niche of terrible poetic angst period. It was not good at the time and now we've woken up from it. No, the most irksome point for me was the characterization of the sheriff. We see him not do anything at the beginning until it becomes a violent confrontation. And then he, perfectly within his rights, when there is a home and a car destroyed by that incident, shoots Jeb. There's no evil there. Even when he shows up to the Guthrie's place afterwards and says that he needs to bring the boy in after he's healed up, is not a bad guy move. Cabot himself shows that he doesn't trust him with Mama Guthrie when the Cabots come to be asshats and basically want to lynch Jeb. But then, out of the blue, midway, you have Cabot and the sheriff talking about how the sheriff is totally in Cabot's pocket. It's random and makes no sense with how we've seen the character act. It'd have worked if we saw him maybe being overly antagonistic to the Guthries, or fully staying out of any conflict between the two. And then the freak out about Ray Sr. banging Mama Guthrie also came out of the blue because we did not see him care at all about race. Yes, one can argue that it was internalized racism, that he didn't care about race until it was a black man banging the woman he wanted to bang. To which I could say that could be it, but it's a moment that needed more build-up than absolutely none. More build-up would have worked well to give Ray Sr. even some form of indirect characterization, so when he doesn't survive the finale, we as an audience could actually care. The final big point is that there's no reason the X-Men needed to be involved in this story at all. It'd have been a much tighter and better flowing story if they kept it as Paige and Angel going back to Cumberland, where the entire premise is focused on these relationships that needed to be fleshed out and sorted out. Think about how more poignant the story could have been by focusing on the human aspect rather than it devolving into a super fight. Without the wasted pages of the X-Team, and believe me, they are wasted pages, Josh and Julia could have been given more time to feel like they've developed. Even taking the wasted pages and opening each of the 5 issues with 2 pages of the 10-year-old them at the pond to show they had a deep connection. So the sparks when they meet at 18 is all the more meaningful to the audience. Joshua could have easily been mortally wounded by dozens of mundane ways, and since Julia drowns herself, you have her brother or cousin be the one to kill him, say by crucifying him, in the same way as the Church of Humanity did, mere issues before, to bring up that the church has grown a deeper following than their direct membership. It would have just added so much, and that is the problem. Ultimately, I did not dislike this comic. I know, I was actually surprised. The inexperience of Chuck Austen truly shows in this piece, as it is a legitimately good story that gets bogged down with indecisiveness. But there is great potential also being shown in his writing, which clearly makes it a decent read, and one that I'm not ashamed to have liked when it came out, and be able to at least have some respect for it reading it once again. But it is far more dated than even the 60s comics are at this point. With all that said, that is the end of today's videos. If you agree, disagree, or just want to give your 2 cents on this storyline, then leave a comment below. While you're down there, if there's a comic story from an ongoing series you'd like to see given the breakdown, let me know. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and please consider supporting our Patreon. Yes, Patreon gives a top priority when it comes to suggestions, and there are actually a lot of projects that can make a comeback with your help and donation. More than anything, though, I'm the Comic Archivist. Stay golden, Inklings.